Hello, today is Tuesday, May 5th, 2015, and I am your host, Sue Brown, and welcome to info2rail, your freight train to modern media. How y'all doing tonight? Tonight we are actually recording at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not used to these night ones, but hey, they're going to be fun. Welcome to our show, and we have a great show in store for you tonight. We are very fortunate to have professional psychic, teacher, author, clearing expert, and exorcist, Jeffery Seelman with us today. This is going to be a very fascinating interview. First, we're going to have a glimpse into the missing persons. Catherine Kitty Vance, age 13, was last seen in Pomona, California on April 17th, 2015. She is 5 foot, 2 inches tall. She weighs 120 pounds, has light brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information on her location, please contact the Pomona Police Department at 909-622-1241 or dial 911. The second one is Paige Lynn Raymond, age 15, was last seen at Sabine High School in Gladewater, Texas on April 17th, 2015. She was wearing a purple t-shirt, blue jeans, black and white shoes, and carrying a gray backpack. She is 5 foot 6 inches tall. She weighs 135 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. She may have cut and dyed her hair an unknown color. Paige Lynn may travel to the Grapevine or Dallas, Texas area, New York, or New Jersey. Anyone with information on her location, please contact the Gregg County Sheriff's Office at 903-237-2531. or toll free at 1-800-765-2189 or dial 911. As I say every week, guys, and I have to say it, it's important that we get these out there it just takes one time, one person to see that missing persons and turn it in, and we can get these unfortunate kids back home where they belong with their families. We're going to take a short break right now, and when we return, we will have Jeffery Seelman with us. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with professional psychic, teacher, author, clearing expert, and exorcist Jeffery Seelman. Jeffery was born on St. Michael's Day, September 29th, 1959. Jeffery Seelman is an internationally recognized professional psychic, teacher, author, clearing expert, and exorcist specializing in the clearing of individuals, homes, businesses, and psychic protection. Jeffery is also an expert in hauntings in homes and businesses, psychic ability, good ghosts such as spirit guides, curses, demonic possession, evil spirits, the relationship between emotional energies and violence. Born with psychic abilities, a practitioner of transcendent meditation, Jeffery uses his psychic skills to release negative emotional energies, banish negative and demonic spirits from individuals, homes, and businesses, dispels myths about the spirit world, and teaches us how to protect ourselves and our property from the effects of negative emotional energy, negative and demonic spirits. Jeffery has appeared on the E! Entertainment television documentary 13 Most Shocking Hollywood Curses. He has been a solo guest 4 times on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, his latest appearance on Coast being January 30th, 2015. He has been written about in Russia's Pravda Online. His interview became the #1 read performed on exorcism on a home for the television cameras, as well as many other television and radio appearances since 1992. Currently, Jeffery has finished his first book entitled Power Protection. He just finished his second book, Life of an Exorcist, which was released September 28th, 2014. Jeffery has his own instruction radio station, Aura Radio. Welcome to info2rail, Jeffery, and thank you so much for being on our show.
Sue, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's great to be here.
Can you start out by telling our listeners about you and what got you into the interests in your very unique, interesting work?
Oh, absolutely. I've been doing these things professionally since 1992. I was born with psychic ability, and I thought everybody was psychic. Now, back in the 1960s, I'm talking about, we didn't really know much about this, and I was able to see spirits. I remembered all of my dreams, and was even able to see little bits of the future, which greatly disturbed my parents and my teachers as well, and students around me. I would see spirits in the classroom, around my fellow students. I thought everybody could do that, and so it was just a mess when I was growing up as just in elementary school back in the 1960s, and I learned to shut my mouth because I was losing friends and the teachers and respect of my parents, you know. And so as a teenager, I always knew when trouble was coming, and I think a lot of people out there, we all have psychic ability, I believe, and a lot of people confuse that with intuition. You know, it really is the same thing. You know, it's not two different things. Intuition is part of psychic ability, and so I was always able to tell when trouble was coming. I still am, and so when I was a teenager, I never got caught for anything, because I knew when the police were coming or the teachers were coming. And a lot of students would actually, like, say they were outside smoking or something like that, they'd actually drag me along because I knew when the teachers were coming or the police or the principal or something. I would get this little warning bell in my head, maybe a 30-second warning, 15-second warning. And so when Jeffrey took off, which my name, that essentially everybody, you know, ran. And so that's kind of how I used it when I was a teenager. I went into the Air Force after high school, and after I got out, my life was kind of in a state of disarray. I just was kind of directionless, and I started to study metaphysical concepts, especially ancient texts. I did that for about 10 years when I wasn't out doing what everybody else was doing in their 20s. I did a very normal life that way. I was working and partying and just trying to have a good time. But when I was alone, I would do a lot of studying. I would go to universities and study metaphysical concepts. When I turned 30, I'm 55 now, and this would be about 1990. In 1990, I ran into a group of individuals that were doing Ouija board sessions for about 20 years. And they were very good at it. And they had they were good at protection, and they had good, clear, open channels. But a couple of them had problems with things going on in their home. And two of these people, one of them was a professional psychic and one of them was a writer. And it came over the Ouija board, actually, that, hey, you know, have Jeffrey take a look. And I thought, well, okay, I don't know what I can really do, but because I was more into studying all of this than anything else. I wasn't really studying clearing concepts at the time. And so I went in there first to the writer's apartment, and he had had many psychics in there to try to get rid of what essentially was a spirit that seemed to be harassing him and trying to interfere in his life. And I went in there, and just some stuff kind of came to me what to do, and I got rid of, essentially kicked the spirit out of his apartment for good. And so they were pretty shocked, this group. And next came the psychic that was seeing a lot of clients at her home. And so that caused some issues with some spirits hanging around her home that were not welcome. And she was unable to get rid of them. She was a psychic reader, but not an energy worker nor an exorcist. And so I went in there, and it just kind of came to me, just sort of channeled, and I got rid of those spirits that kicked them out of her home. And so this group really said to me, Jeffrey, you really ought to take this to the public, and I did. I started out with really small ads in newspapers. It really went nowhere. I don't think I got hardly any clients out of it, really. We're talking about 1991 now, and then I got a few jobs, and I was successful at it. I actually had a partner at that time who was my girlfriend also, and she was a professional psychic and a really good one. And but she didn't like handling the getting rid of the spirit part of it, negative spirits, and that seemed to be more of my forte. And so we did that, and that kind of led to a newspaper article, and then that led to both of us appearing on the television show Sightings. In 1994, I think it was filmed. Three girls had a very negative spirit in their condominium in Wisconsin, and they flew out from Los Angeles and filmed the actual exorcism, and I kicked the spirit out of the condo, and it never came back. And that led to doing some more national television, and eventually doing a lot of local radio. I'd actually go into the studios in the morning shows that they would have, and I come from a city where there's about 500,000 people. And so they'd, have maybe 10 or 20,000 people listening. And I was real nervous when I first started out doing that stuff. I got rid of that after a while, just from doing it for so long. But it was interesting, So I, going into a radio studio and having the DJs actually laugh at me, right to my face, snickering, and, here comes Jeffrey the Exorcist. And what I did was I simply talked right over them. I felt that my concepts of what I was trying to talk about were sound. And so I got around it by, I answered their question very quickly, then I would speak to the audience. I knew that, there were thousands of people listening, and I would simply talk to the audience and not to the DJ. And that was something that they could not really deny. And so what started out as sort of embarrassing, and a little frightening, actually, I would turn it around into my favor. And you can actually listen to some of those old shows that I did, those first shows back in the 1990s on my website. I kept them around. I recorded them and kept them around for nostalgia's sake, essentially. Even just for me, going into my, doing my first national shows and my first radio shows. And so it kind of started like that. And a lot of supernatural things happened to me that I talk about on different radio shows in the first book that I wrote, which is actually an audio book. So a lot of weird things have happened to me, and when I was 4 years old, I woke up and there were two aliens in my bedroom, and wow. You can always tell an alien because they really look alien, and they were quite physical. And so that kind of started some things rolling early on in my life that never stopped. A lot of really weird things have happened to me, and still do.
Can you tell us what a clearing is and what it consists of?
Yes. A clearing is essentially a modern exorcism. And a modern exorcism is when the atmosphere is cleared of emotional energy that is negative. We all generate emotional energy, both positive and negative. We don't have to worry about the positive stuff, and I don't touch the positive stuff. But the negative stuff needs to be removed from an environment because it accumulates. Most of us live in environments where other people have lived before. Some of us live in apartment buildings or homes that might be 30, 40, 50, or 100 years old. And you can imagine how many people have slept in our bedrooms and eaten in our kitchens and been in our living rooms years before we ever moved in. And we all generate these emotional energies, and they're real energies. And like I said, they accumulate, Sue. And so clearing is the removal of emotional energy that is negative from a living or working environment or a person's aura, which I usually refer to as a person's energy fields, an individual's energy fields. So also the removal of a spirit, if necessary. That is also part of a clearing. It's not always an exorcism. Many people call me and say, hey, Jeffrey, I need an exorcism. I'm possessed or whatever. But if you really think about it, if they were possessed, an exorcist would be the last person that a spirit would allow them to call. So they're not completely possessed. They might be under attack. So modern exorcism is actually the removal of negative emotional energy from a person's energy field or their living or working environment, and also the removal of a negative spirit if there is a negative spirit involved, and that is only in a certain percentage of the cases that I deal with, which is a lot of cases, I'm very busy.
Say that you build a new house on a foundation that had a lot of negative energy in the house that was there before it, or just the actual property where it was. Would that negative energy stick around in the house that you built because it's on that foundation?
It's a good question, Sue. I have found that emotional energy that is negative naturally gravitates towards the earth, much like gravity, which is physical, does. Emotional energy has no physical properties, but the earth has physical and non-physical properties as well. And left to its own devices, negative emotional energy tends to gravitate towards the center of the earth, but it does also tend to be remain near the surface as well, especially if there's been negative events that have occurred on the property, and then somebody builds a structure on top of the property. Some of that negative emotional energy or negative spirits that may be attracted to that negative emotional energy, it's kind of like a battery, almost like a power source, can affect new structures. And so people who build homes, new homes, they do call me and complain and say, look, the home is new, so it's not something that happened here in the past. But I do find when I investigate that the ground may have problems. And also, all couples have problems, and that can contribute to it. So it's very much energy that's happening in the now, and events that have taken place in the past. You mix the two together, and they don't always mix very well.
Like, how do I say this? Is negative emotional energy stronger than positive emotional energy, or are they the same?
Not even close. Actually, positive energy is much stronger, and most people are good, and most spirits are good. But it's not what people need to worry about, that when we feel positive energy, let's say a positive spirit comes near us, a dead loved one or something comes to visit us, we usually get really good feelings. We get these warm fuzzies, hey, I can feel my grandmother around me or something like that. These are not problematic. What people don't realize is that there are negative spirits out there, just like there are negative people. It's a percentage of spirits, and negative emotional energy is because it accumulates in environments, because it's very much like a gas, but it's actually a non-physical energy. And we all generate both positive and negative energies. It's absolutely not stronger, but it can cause a variety of problems in the home or business.
Is there anything we can do if we are surrounded by this negative emotional energy? Is there something we can do to lift that energy from our homes ourselves?
Yeah, we have to be careful. If it's just negative emotional energy, then we can do some ancient, tried, and proven practices like smudging, which is essentially sage, burning sage or frankincense, does break up negative emotional energy. The problem is that it doesn't necessarily remove it from our environments. It's kind of like it breaks up emotional energy, but it doesn't really move it out of the home or the living or the working environment. And so we have to learn something about how to move emotional energy. And we most of us have the capability of doing such things, but we have to learn how to do that. So doing things like burning smudge sticks, smudging, which a lot of people are familiar with, they really work as far as breaking up emotional energy. But unfortunately, it breaks up the emotional energy, but it does not remove the emotional energy from the environment. And we need to learn something about how to do that. That's one of the things that I teach people how to do.
Is it what is smudging? Is that something that, I mean, what can we do to remove the negative emotional energies from what we're going through in our lives?
One thing that I tell my clients to do, which is an ancient recipe, I did not invent this, is sea salt mixed with water. And seems to have a really good effect upon the outer edges of a person's energy fields, also known as the aura. And so what I tell my clients to do, unless you're allergic to salt, then don't do it. So that's a disclaimer. But if you mix about 2 tablespoons of sea salt into bath water, it also works if you swim in the ocean. For those of you who live near any kind of warm water, seawater, you can do it that way too. A lot of my clients do. But if you take about 2 tablespoons of sea salt and put it into some clear bath water, meaning no soap or any other kind of perfume or anything else inside of the bath water, and make sure that you take a plastic cup, no glass, and pour it over the top of your head and down your front and down your back. It does clear the outer portions of a person's aura, which not only strengthens the aura, but allows negative emotional energy to release from a person's energy fields. So that's one thing a person can do. Smudging, the most common kinds of smudging are with sage. Sometimes sage is mixed with cedar. Usually you find this in different kinds of metaphysical shops. They usually are wrapped up in some kind of string. And it's very good to do that. I recommend that people do that. And it doesn't really smell all that great. And so what I tell my clients is that, get some really sweet smelling incense and then sage your apartment or home, and then you open the windows and let everything air out, and then use some sweet smelling incense because it smells like, I remember one time many years ago, this is late 1990s, I was clearing an apartment and I was using sage, I believe, and as to break up trapped emotional energy before I pushed it out of the environment, which is the second part of clearing a home or a business. And somebody saw some smoke coming out of the window. I opened up the windows after that, and they called the fire department. So the fire department came, and so I had some explaining to do. So, but sage is something that's been used for thousands of years. Frankincense also thousands of years. Most of you have probably heard about frankincense of myrrh. Of course, that's in the Bible. Myrrh is not a cleansing agent. It's a harmonizing agent as far as it's a resin also. And like frankincense, but I always tell people that you want to use straight frankincense or something like copal for clearing, which really will break up trapped emotional energy. It won't necessarily move it out of your place, but it will break it up. With a little bit of training, you can learn how to actually push the stuff out. If you open up the windows, you're going to get some of it, and it may be enough, you know. So if there's a small problem, but it does break up emotional energy, and so that's what they mean by smudging. Is the burning of sage is the most common. I started to use frankincense back in the mid-90s because sage smudge sticks, as they're known, they're very hard to put out. They have a way of dripping, and so you have to hold something underneath it. I have found out the hard way, you know, that little flakes that are burning can, you know, drip off of the smudge sticks and land on people's couches and chairs and beds and can start a fire. So you have to be very, very careful. I started using straight frankincense resin, which means chunks of frankincense, in actual incense burners that they make for that very purpose, because it was just simply safer to use in other people's homes and businesses, much less chance of something dripping and getting away, almost no chance. And because way back when I did little damage a couple times when I didn't know any better. So I started using frankincense, and the Catholic Church has been using frankincense in their churches for that purpose for centuries. They also, to be fair, for those scholars out there listening, they also use frankincense as a perfume in the churches as well, because as we all know, back in the 14th century, they did not have showers.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah, so they actually, because people were not as clean as they are today, they didn't have access, necessarily to, clean water sources, that when people would gather together in the church, they used frankincense for two reasons. One was to keep negative emotional energy out of the church, which they still use it for, and very successfully, the Catholic Church. And but way back when, they also used it to make the church smell good, because it didn't always smell so good.
What is your opinion on deja vu? Do you know anything about that?
Well, it certainly happened to me many times, Sue. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I know that there's probably a lot of people out there that would just, love to give their opinion on what exactly it is. I guess most commonly it's known as a feeling that I have been here before. That we've done this before. I've been in this place before. It certainly happened to me. If I had to guess, I would say that it probably has something to do with alternative realities, or the concept of that part of our minds are sort of looking either sideways or back at a particular event. There's a philosophy out there that all things happen at once. There is no such thing as the future and the past. I don't know if that's true. It's a real heavy subject, but that if all things are happening at the same time, then the idea that, that I've been in this bank before, I've been in this restaurant before, even though you know that you haven't, is a way your mind is sort of looking at an event from another perspective. I hope that makes some kind of sense, because I'm not exactly sure what deja vu is. It's happened to me many times, but I'm not an expert on that particular one.
Well, I ask you this to tell you, I'm wondering if it's part of my psychic ability. I have the ability, and it happens to me often. I have a deja vu moment, but in my deja vu moment, I rush all the way to the end of that deja vu moment, and I can see the outcome very clearly, and it's always bad. So at that immediate moment, I know I have like this big, intense feeling that I have to stop the events that are happening at that exact moment and change things, because I know the outcome is going to be bad. And I've changed a lot of outcomes in my life for that reason, or with that ability. And I just didn't know if that was something, is that a specific kind of a psychic ability?
Yeah, everybody has psychic ability. And it runs on a deeper level. I believe that everybody is part physical and part non-physical. That part of us that's non-physical is also referred to as the spirit. It is also referred to as our soul. So the soul is not really a little light inside of us. It's not something that we become. We don't become a spirit when we die. We are a spirit right now. It's not a religious thing. To me, it's science. And spirits don't have innards, for lack of a better term. They don't have eyes, they don't have ears, they don't have internal systems. There's no oxygen on the other side. On that level of existence, they're not necessary. That does not mean that spirits cannot create eyes and ears. It's just not necessary in order to perceive things. What I use terms like the mind's eye and the mind's ear when describing perceiving either physical reality or non-physical reality without the use of our physical eyes or our physical ears. So essentially, spirits communicate telepathically, which is mental telepathy. And we all have that. It's all going on another level of our existence right now. And we can look at it sort of like points on a graph, that if our physical system, is like points 6 through 10, our spirits might be points 1 through 5. And we're not always paying attention to points 1 through 5. We're paying attention to the physical universe because our eyes, which are very physical, are geared for that. And so we're not always paying attention to the undercurrent of communication that's going on inside of us all. I think that's changing because of evolution, that we are all becoming more attuned and more psychic, or at least a lot of us, not everyone, but most of us are becoming more psychic. And I was talking about that with somebody last night. I think it was a client I was talking to, that we were talking about the internet, and she had said something kind of negative about it. And I said, look, I'm a very highly technological person, and my background is in technology. And I believe that the internet and mobile phones and everything else in between is a physical plane model of mental telepathy. And that's why it's so great. Yeah, we're having some problems with it. It's new and all the rest of it. There are some issues. But the idea is that we're communicating with each other individually. It's amazing. You can talk to somebody, go on the internet and talk to somebody from America who is living in China or India or Europe, and become friends with them. Maybe just you'll never see them in person, but you can talk to them, over Skype or over the internet, or write them, or Facebook, or all these different things. I really think all these things are really good. And each of us has different talents that we could develop. We were talking about this before the show, actually. Sue and I were talking, and we all have these different talents that we can develop that pertain to our interests. And so my interests are more in clearing people and homes and businesses, and teaching people how to protect themselves from negative emotional energy that is generated not only by spirits, but mostly by living people. It's not really so much spirits that we have to worry about. That is there. But most spirits are good. Some are not. But what we really have to watch out for is our living environments and our working environments, because people are giving off emotional energy, and if we don't protect ourselves, that emotional energy can permeate, enter into our body's energy fields, and actually make us feel that way. If there's anger out there in the environment, which is an energy, too much anger, that actually can permeate into our body's energy fields and actually make us angrier, amplify our anger. And so that's what we need to watch out for. And so besides doing clearings, and I've been doing this now for 23 years professionally, one of the things I really like to do is teach people how to protect themselves from their work environments, from other people, because our two desks over, who might be really, really nice, are having a bad day, maybe had a bad night at home, and they're angry. They come into work and they're generating some negative energy, and we can pick that up and take that home with us. And so we need to protect ourselves, and it's really easy to do.
I had I don't know how to word this, but I've had the experiences where I can walk into a place and I just feel the whole place is just nothing but negative energy. And it makes you want to cry or yell or scream, and it just makes you so angry. And it's this feeling that I have to get out of there right now, because it's starting just to fill my own energy. It's starting to overcome my energy.
We have to learn how to strengthen our body's energy fields, also known as the aura, and put up protection systems which are non-physical in nature, because the only thing that we need to protect ourselves from are other non-physical energies. Now, I'm not talking about physical intruders and criminals and that kind of thing. That's a different subject. But if we don't put up some kind of shield, and I teach a multi-layered protection system, and if you don't get it from me, get it from somewhere else. It's not important whether you follow my stuff or somebody else's, but the idea is that if we're not protecting ourselves properly, we can pick up emotional energy from environments that are already there, meaning that it doesn't have to, we don't have to have negative people around us in order to pick up negative emotional energy, Sue. There just has to be negative emotional energy in the environment. We go walking into the environment, and it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like a gas, but it's not physical. We don't see it, but we can feel it. Everybody probably has a story of, and you just had mentioned one, where we'd walk into somebody's home or a restaurant or something, and it just doesn't feel good. And what we're picking up on is emotional energy. And we can survive these kinds of things because sometimes we have to. a lot of times our work environments are not pleasant places. There's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of resentment, a lot of worry going on. Everybody's got their own issues at home. And we have to learn how to protect ourselves so we come out of there as unscathed as possible. So protection is the answer to that, so you don't feel that way.
When we had talked before the show, you were telling me what happens after we die. Can you tell our listeners that?
Yeah, and I think the best way to do this would, I'll tell a very short story that happened to me. I was sitting at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee in 1987, and I was studying something. I forgot what. I was completely awake, and I was completely sober. And all of a sudden, I was somewhere else. I was driving in this old truck, and it was so strange. I did not initiate this experience. This is something I later learned that my spirit guides initiated. It was just many things have happened to me since. But so I'm driving, and I was unable to even control what I was seeing. And I saw the face of the person who was driving this truck. I knew it was a truck because it had a really high ceiling, and it reminded me of this old truck. And later on, I did see it, but essentially, I saw myself, and I did not look like myself. I was much younger. At that time, I was about 27. This person looked to me about 19, but I looked at the eyes, and I could just tell it was me. I just had this real strong feeling that it was me. Next thing I know, I hear this bang, and I could feel myself kind of hitting the side of the truck, and I'm rolling down the road. I'm just rolling down the road, and then I stop rolling, and I look down, and I see a body lying in the middle of the road, and I see this old truck with what must have been the engine smoking. I had hit some kind of outcropping of rock along this road. I had rolled down this road and rolled right out of my body. I felt like I was about maybe 20 feet in the air. And the first thing I noticed, and I remember saying to myself, is, I'm dead. It was so clear and obvious. I saw my own body lying there, and I said, I am dead. And the second thought that came to me was that I feel great. I feel fine. I feel exactly the same way that I did before the accident, and that there was no physical pain. My mind did not change at all in any way, and that nothing had happened. So that was that was essentially a past death experience. That was something that my spirit guides wanted me to experience so that I'd be able to help people later on. I put that into my first book, that experience, and talk about it on different radio and TV shows and all that, to let people know that when they die, that the only thing that happens is that their physical body ceases to function. Their personality, which is not physical, continues exactly as it did. Their emotions continue to exist exactly as they did. The only thing that will change slowly is your perceptions, because once the physical containment or obstacle is removed, the perceptions grow. And so you're able to remember more of your life, and more of telepathy comes into play. So that should be really good news for a lot of people, that, hey, there's no such thing as death. This is as close to death as we're ever going to get. And that we do go on. This is really good news for a lot of people and really bad news for others. And we had talked a little bit about that before the show as well, is that people who don't take care of themselves emotionally, who let their angers, fester throughout their lives. Anger at themselves, anger at other people, people who do really bad things to other people. That is something that they're going to take with them when they die. They're not going to shed that when they die. So the concept that we leave our negativity in the physical world when we die is not true. The concept that we leave our sins behind us when we die, what some people call karma, is not true. And I know there are people out there who will disagree with me on that, but that's my opinion.
So after we do lose our physical bodies, do we, for those who were not good people in life, do they actually come to reality with what they really were?
What they really are, because actually nothing changes besides the physical body, which is really just something made up of, on our planet anyway, Earth stuff. We eat food, we grow bodies, all the rest of it. It's the smallest portion of ourselves. So our soul, as I mentioned before, is active right now in our system. It's not something, and our spirit. We are essentially spirits. And so when we die, we don't change at all. So we do have to face ourselves and also the repercussions of everything that we do while we were alive. That if we hurt other people, we're acutely aware of that when we die, more than ever. We can't run away from it because as our perceptions change and grow after we die, the things that we do in our physical life actually are right there staring at us in the face. And I do believe that there are higher spirits out there that are involved in a lot of this for those people who care not about their negative actions, simply are going to have to take a look at them and eventually make some kind of reparation for the things that they have done. That's true of all of us. And in the eastern side of our small planet, they call that karma. And in the western side, we call that original sin. Now, some people will disagree with me on that too. What is original sin? It's got nothing to do with what somebody did 2,000 years ago. It's got everything to do with what we did in our past life.
So you believe that we've all had past lives? Do you believe we've had several past lives, or?
Absolutely, probably 100, if not more. We need these things in order to experience different perspectives on physical reality, what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to be a man, what it's like to be a mother, a father, what it's like to be in this situation. Also, it's a lot about character building. All of us have problems, or we would not be in the physical reality, in the physical world on our planet Earth. So I've never met anybody, not even the most realized guru, who doesn't have some personal issues, some character defects. And one of the things that we're here to do is to work on some of these character defects. We all have them. So as an example, if we, say, have a lifelong alcohol or drug problem and we don't take care of it, you can be sure that we'll be looking at that in our next life. We'll be running through that again until we finally realize that, no, you can't, do heroin. Know that being an alcoholic is something that you have to address because that particular chemical is not good for you. That's not true of everybody. I'm not down on alcohol. I'm not anti-drugs or anything like that. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if it's a problem, then if we don't deal with it in this life, we'll be dealing with it in a future life.
So, how do we, when we do die and we come back again, do you believe that we have a consciousness awareness of the wrong that we did in the last life. So we're this life, the next life is to try to make that better.
That's a good question, Sue. There's a couple of different answers to that. There's no law that says that we cannot remember events that have happened to us in a past life. Many people have had little glimpses of past lives, things they've done which they believe are their past lives. It's very common in India, for instance, which is, they firmly believe in past lives over there, that for them to go visit strange families. So there's no rule that says that we can't get glimpses of such things. Now, that being said, the reason that we don't simply remember past lives, there's a reason for that. Let's say that in a past life that we were a serial killer or did some really bad stuff. If we were to remember that right off the bat, right away, that was in our minds and we couldn't get it out of our minds, we may not progress. And that's a problem. So if we'd have this terrible guilt trip our entire lives, if we remembered that, in 1929 or whatever, that I was doing some very, very bad things, if we remembered everything, and some people call this, crossing the river of forgetfulness when we are born. There's a reason for that, that we need a fresh start, that we need to be able to look at life with fresh eyes. Those issues from past lives are bound to crop up at some point, not always right away. So it'd be real confusing, if we've lived, say, 20 lifetimes. If all of those memories were right there, as they will be when we die, eventually we will remember all of these lifetimes. But if we do in the physical, while we're in a physical life, if all this stuff is crowded into our brains, into our minds, we're never going to get anything done because we're going to be too concerned with what we did in past lives and not concerned with what we did in this life. So if you did something really negative, like say you murdered somebody in a past life, if you had a strong memory of that you were born with and you couldn't shake that out of your head, you probably wouldn't get anything done. You'd be so guilt-ridden that you would not go on and do something really great, and change that behavior pattern.
Say that you were a murderer in your past life. Is there a possibility or a chance that you can bring that same actions into your next life?
I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people who do negative things their whole life. Now, some of this is due to environments when they're young. People who are abused turn out to be abusers themselves. There's a lot of factors that come into play here. But there are people who hurt other people without any explanation whatsoever. I think an excellent example would be somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer. Without going into a big history of this guy, there's nothing in his past that would account for his actions. He came from a very normal childhood. Sure, there were some parental issues going on, but both his parents were normal people. He was not abused, and yet he became, a monster. Now, it's my feeling that he probably always was. We're talking about essentially an evil spirit. I don't think he's a demonic spirit. I think he's an evil spirit, and I think that he's probably done this kind of thing in a past life. There is simply no explanation for his behavior. I'm simply using him as an example because he's famous, and people, they study these people. What makes these people do these things? there's not always an answer. Sometimes there is. They were abused as a child horribly and then became abusers themselves. But in a lot of cases, there is simply no accounting. There's no explanation for why these people become sadistic and hurt people or even kill people. And this may be due to a predisposition to hurting other people from other lifetimes, and it's unfortunately part of their nature.
Is that true with negative emotional energy as well? Can that cause somebody that is not that kind of a person to actually become that kind of a person?
Yeah, negative emotional energy, people become angry, depressed for many reasons. We look at our history. One of the things that people say to me a lot is, what bad times we're going through right now, in 2015. And I tell them, I said, we've never had it better. It's just not true. Women have more rights. In some countries, it's not true, but let's just say that in the Western world, women, finally have rights. They're not second-class citizens. We have a ways to go. Minorities, same thing, that have made great strides. So actually, there's less violence now than there was in the past. In our past history of this world, it was quite legal to kill people. And so kings could do it. Armies could do it. There's some accountability today. If we really sit down and think about it, we actually, our world is a lot less violent than it used to be. Now, that being said, a lot of things that have happened in history are emotional, have had an emotional effect upon us that does carry over into future lifetimes. And so people might have a predisposition to depression or anger that does come from past lives. That's not always the case. A lot of it comes from this lifetime, but a lot of it does come from past lifetimes as well, and it can build up.
If we project a lot of positive energy where we go because we're just positive people, can we actually counteract the negative energy around us?
I think so. Living by example is the best way to do it. So as I tell my clients, that if you're in the office and somebody comes in, or workplace, wherever you work, and somebody comes up to you and, says, hey, this place sucks. This is an awful place to work. Don't you hate the boss? Gee, I really want to get out of here. I don't like that person over there at, desk, Y or X or whatever. We don't have to buy into that. We can say something like, hey, it's hump day, it's Wednesday, or it's Friday, it's payday, or hey, it's not that bad. This place isn't that bad. At least we get to listen to music while we're working. Some places you can't do that. You say something positive, you might change that person, but what probably is going to happen, the reality is that person is going to move away from you and go to somebody else and try that, on somebody else, that it works on. So what I mean by all of this is that save yourself, that we can have an effect upon the world, we can have an effect upon our environment, and we do have an effect upon the world and on our environment. But it's most important that we don't let negativity or negative people have an effect upon us. So, by saying, things, putting up our shields, which is a great part of my work, teaching people how to do that, and not buying into the negativity. The fact is that there's less violence. Let's just say one country, America, United States, There's so many countries in this world, and my clients come from all over the world, but just an example, there's actually less violence now in America than ever before. That's a fact. But that's not what the news media will tell you. They'll beat something to death, somebody gets killed, no pun intended there, but the idea is that, something negative happens someplace in our country, and they'll go over it and over it and over it and over it without offering any solutions. And also, they won't talk about all the people that are being born. They'll talk about somebody who got killed, on some college campus or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with reporting the news, but the idea is that they have no solutions. They offer no solutions to any of this. And also that they don't talk about any positive things. And if they do, it's just a fluff story. They might talk about, and I don't mean to pick on media, but they have to take some responsibility for this, that they might talk about, hey, 5 children were born to one mother, and that's a news story. But they never talk about one child being born. You don't really hear that on the news too much, that, hey, 25,000 children were born in the United States today, or in Europe, or in Asia or South America. They don't talk about the positive stuff. It's pretty much the body count. And we hear that stuff enough, and we start getting the impression that this world is just a horrible, negative place, and it's just not. It's not. We have our problems, but we're an ingenious group of people. The human race is just... I have just really high hopes for the human race. We've gotten ourselves out of one mess after another in history. We're going to get ourselves out of our current problems with, the environment, meaning, the problems with climate change and violence. These are things that we kind of do to ourselves. They're not just happening. There's a solution here, that we don't have to hurt each other. We teach children to commit violent acts, and I'll just speak about that very quickly, that, when I was growing up in the 1960s and 70s, we simply did not have, violent video games. That technology did not exist. I remember that the most violent movie, my father took me to see, my brother and I, to see The French Connection about 1972, 73 when it came out. That was the most violent movie at the time that ever existed. That would not even rate as a violent movie today. It's not even really that violent. But that was the most violent movie that existed at the time. Now where's this violence coming from? We're teaching it to our children. Our parents are not paying attention, to the violence that our young people are being exposed to through violent video games, and they're not paying attention to it. And the result is that we're growing up with a group of people, our young people, that unfortunately are just not aware of how violent some of these things are, and that are becoming violent themselves because of it. Way too much violence out there, and I'm not against violence in movies, by the way. I kind of like violent movies because I know that they're movies. I'm an adult, and I know that they're not real, and I don't want them to be real. But when it comes to real violence, it's a very different thing. And I know one thing that people should know: the European Union does not allow advertising to children on television. Now, I'm not saying we should be like the European Union. We're speaking just as an American. I've been over to Europe many times. And a very nice place in a lot of ways. They have their own problems, but the idea is, and your show, of course, is a worldwide show, and I have a worldwide business myself. But that's something to take into account, that the European Union does not allow advertising to children in any way, shape, or form. because they are so impressionable.
Wow.
Not just violence, cereal. You cannot sell cereal to children.
Wow. That's strange. I couldn't imagine,
Well, I think it's an excellent idea. For one, you can sell anything to children. They don't know any better.
Absolutely.
If you tell them to eat, grass, they're going to eat it.
Absolutely.
They're children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that, they figured out over there that they're so impressionable that they're not going to allow advertising to children on television. They're not old enough to understand, and they're too impressionable. And so they simply outlawed it.
So basically, if we go through our lives with a positive attitude, seeing positive outlook on things, and really pushing for positive, then is that what we're going to attract? Is that how it works? If you're positive, you attract positive, and if you're negative, you attract negative?
Well, yes, to some degree. I think that's true, but I'm a different kind of psychic. I'm more of a warrior psychic. I deal with a lot of people who have negative things happening in their homes and their businesses and in their personal lives, and I don't think it's important to like everybody. Now, I was just telling a client yesterday that, that you don't have to like everybody. So I don't think it's important to run around being positive. I think it's important to try to make our lives a better place. But there are people in this world who probably should be dead. And so being positive is not going to save us. There are people out there who want to see us dead, and they need to be dealt with. And so I'm ex-military. And it's my personal opinion that we have to face the reality today that we're not going to positive ourselves out of enemies that are real, that want to see freedom destroyed and have their own system of religion or government installed, whoever they may be. And so I don't think it's always important to be positive. I think it's important to be real and to recognize and gravitate and offer positive solutions. Very important, because I think that's what you're talking about. Offer positive solutions. Try to offer solutions about maybe some alternative energy. Something I thought. I was talking with a psychic about this yesterday, another psychic, in the 1970s, when I was in high school, I thought for sure by the year 2015 we'd have alternative energy. I mean, we could put together incredible smartphones, incredible internet systems, but we can't put together alternative energy, and that's deliberate and it's wrong. And so we can be positive and offer positive solutions, but we have to also be keenly aware that there are very negative people out there on a physical level and also on a emotional level that don't feel that way, and we don't have to like them. And it's not important to like everybody, and also that being positive is not going to change them. Sometimes we have to just protect ourselves from them. And sometimes we have to also, unfortunately, engage them on a physical level as well as an emotional level.
Can you tell us the name of your books that you wrote and where we can purchase them?
Sure. I think the most important one is the one you can get from Amazon.com or iTunes, and that is called Power Protection. That is my favorite book that I did. My first book as well. I wrote that in Chicago in I think 2013, and it's doing rather well. It teaches people how to protect themselves from negative emotional energy in the home environment, in the work environment, and it also teaches people how to do some clearing and maintain clearing of the home environment and work environment, Also, it goes into how to protect oneself from negative spirits. Most spirits are good, like people. Most people are good. Most people would never steal from you or hurt you or whatever, but some people would. And it's true also of spirits, and I go into that. So if you go on Amazon.com and just type in Power Protection, and my name is Jeffery Seelman, you'll find my book, and it's an audiobook. I was approached by many different publishing houses about publishing that book. I turned them all down. It wasn't about the money. I didn't want the editor's hands on my book. Because as a teacher, and I am a teacher, that I tend to repeat myself. And I think in order for a student to learn something, that you have to. A good teacher is going to repeat themselves and bring that point back home somewhere along that course. And I didn't want an editor to get a hold of that and say, well, we need to cut that out of chapter 6 because you said that in chapter 1. Well, they're going to have to go back to chapter 1 in order to learn how to do that properly. So I did my books in an audio format because as my clients and people who have that book, especially Power Protection, have said to me that they actually have learned those techniques better by listening to me teaching it than they would if it was written in a book form. People ask me all the time, can I get that in written form? And I say, no, I really didn't want that in written form. I wanted that to be, in audio form, so you can listen to it in your car or at home. I know people who actually, play that particular book or chapters of that book when they have people over because it tends to make them more peaceful, the environment more peaceful.
Can you tell us about your second book and where we can get that and what your website is?
My second book is titled Life of an Exorcist, and it is, I didn't release it to Amazon.com or iTunes yet. I wrote it in Las Vegas when I was living in Las Vegas last year. I had mixed feelings about it. It's not a particularly pleasant book. And as Power Protection is really a great book, it's really what I wanted to do. It's a book that helps people. But Life of an Exorcist is really about my life, and it's more of the day-to-day workings of an exorcist and the kind of things that I come into contact with. And it's a little bit frightening. And it's also a little bit of a warning, that because so many people want to do this kind of work and they want to help, and that's great. But when you go into the business of clearing people's homes and lives, you also run into negative spirits, and you better be prepared for that and have some kind of ability to do that. And so I did not release that as of yet, but you can get that on my website, which is starclear.com, and so that's available on my website. I just haven't quite decided whether I want to release that, to the general public so easily, because when I wrote it or spoke it, I should say, when I created that book, what was in my mind, was more of a warning of how hard it is to do my kind of work. I make a lot of enemies. I help a lot of people, but also there's a lot of negative spirits out there that would like to get a hold of me. And because I do help so many people and do kick so many negative spirits out of people's homes and environments and lives, very dangerous work, and I wasn't quite sure if I wanted that one released. One of these days I probably will. I might go over it a couple times. I might add something onto it before I release that to the public.
When you have a job like yours where you're clearing houses and people, do these spirits actually stick to you? Do they actually become part of your life afterwards, after you've taken them out of someone else's life?
No, really the exact opposite. I teach people how to bring up energy from the level of their spirit on the level that spirits exist and the level that spirits live on, which is essentially the non-physical level. It's very scientific. And when I clear a home or a business or a person, I'm actually bringing energy up from that level. I teach people how to do that. And so I'm actually throwing energy up out through me and through the environment and either down into the earth, or when I'm working with a spirit to kick that spirit out of a person's home, I attack that particular spirit, and so they're not a part of my life. Actually, they're farther removed from me than ever before, and also from the people that I help. The problem is, of course, is that I make enemies. That it builds up, especially after 23 years of doing it. There's an awful lot of negative spirits out there that don't like the work that I do, and don't like books like Power of Protection, which teach people how to keep negative spirits out of their lives and how to protect themselves from negative spirits. So actually, there's really no connection between me and negative spirits. But as George Norrie, I've been on Coast to Coast 4 times now, interviewed, and as I said to George, that I'm okay when I'm working, but I certainly have been hit a few times by negative spirits when I've turned my back in social situations. Because that's one of the questions he asked me, was that, have you ever been attacked by a negative spirit successfully? And the answer is yes, but it's always been when I'm not working. When I'm working, I'm paying attention to all of this and protecting myself. But that there have been times when I've been in social situations and my back has been turned, and they've given me a swift kick in the you-know-what.
Wow.
Usually on an emotional level, and a couple of times on a physical level. And I've actually been injured physically once or twice.
That is scary.
It is, especially by demonic spirits, which are essentially the counterpart of angels. So we're talking about advanced spirits that really are no longer in the physical realm, meaning that they don't live physical lives, but they're very powerful. They've been around for a long time, and they know how to hurt people. They know how to amplify people's angers really easily and get them to do things that they would not normally do. And when the wind is right, meaning that there is a lot of emotional energy in the atmosphere, they're even capable of telekinetic activity, which means that they're able to move physical objects, or even occasionally hurt somebody physically. Wow. It's happened to me once or twice.
That is definitely scary.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I want to really thank you for coming on with us. This was a very, very interesting interview to me. I learned a lot. And as I told you when we were chatting before the show, I do this because I'm so interested in learning different viewpoints from different people, and just getting to know different people. And, it was a pleasure having you on here, and I really hope that you'll come back with us again.
Oh, anytime, Sue. Thanks for having me on info2rail. It was just great talking to you before the show and also during the show, and just great questions. Just anytime, just get a hold of me. Be happy to come on the show.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was a phenomenal interview, guys. Each and every one of these interviews that I do, they just fill me up with knowledge, and I'm so excited and so happy to have each and every one of these amazing people on our show, and learn from them, learn what they do and who they are, and I just love what I do. But you know what I do could not be possible without my listeners. So you guys make this possible, and the guests make it possible, and I want to thank not only, Jeffery Seelman for coming on the show, and all my guests who have, but I want to thank all my listeners, and for, tell you how important you are to me, and how grateful I am for all of you. That's all we have time for today. We post our shows on YouTube, and if you want to know more about our guests and upcoming shows, just visit our info2rail webpage. It's info2rail. Just Google it, and you can go right on our Google Sites page, And from there, you can click on YouTube, or you can just type in info2rail and go straight to our YouTube page. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, each and every one of you, for joining us here at info2rail. And I really hope to see you here each and every week. You all mean the world to me, and I'm so grateful that you take the time to be with us. May God bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you in these uncertain times. We'll see you soon.